We'll go ahead and get the meeting started. Welcome to the audit committee meeting. Our first item is the approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to the approval of the March 18th audit committee minutes. Are there any amendments or changes to the minutes? Can I get a move to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Our first item of business is the oath of office of our two new audit committee external members, and I'll hand it over to Matt.
So we're just, thanks Shirley. So I just wanted to first acknowledge we have Deanna Pasek from Ramsey County joining us for her first meeting today, and Scott Zakowski from the Metropolitan Airports Commission. We really appreciate you joining us and welcome your input and feedback to the council. I actually asked around, we don't have to do an oath of office. I know we're not gonna do it publicly today in the meeting, but we're gonna have you sign it, the Secretary of State's version. And actually, I don't think we've done this before with our other external members, so Gracie and Andra. We're gonna have you do it too after the meeting. So just kind of put some time and space here to acknowledge that. Luckily we have a notary as our recording secretary, so we'll wrap that up after the meeting. But won't spend any time with it during the meeting. So that's just our first business item. And I'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
All right. Thanks, Director Latour. Our next item of business is the State Auditors Exit Conference, and we have Stephanie Kuka and Zachary Bocher.
Hello, thank you for having us today. I'm Stephanie Kuka. I'm the Audit Director from the State Auditor's Office, and with me is Zach Boucher. He is the lead auditor on the Metropolitan Council audit. So we're here today to just present to you the results of our audit. And so before you, you have a packet. It is a draft version of our management and compliance report. It is considered a draft until it is issued by our office. So I passed it out to you today, and then we'll have to pick it back up at the end of the meeting, and you will get a clean issued report emailed to you by the end of the month. Guys, we will jump into the packet. The first page we will look at is the required communications letter. It's the first item. And so we have audited the financial statements of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the Metropolitan Council, a component unit of the state of Minnesota, as of and for the year ended December 31st of 2024. I'm going to highlight some key areas on this packet. I won't read the whole thing to you and take up your whole meeting time. So down in the next section, under our responsibilities, under U.S. Generally Accepted Auditing Standards and Uniform Guidance, our responsibilities as your auditors are to express opinions about whether the financial statements prepared by management with your oversight are fairly presented in all material respects in conformity with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. The second paragraph just points out that we consider the Metropolitan Council's internal control over financial reporting to determine what audit procedures we would perform in order to express our opinions on the financial statements, but we don't provide assurance on the internal controls over financial reporting. So we don't specifically issue an opinion on the internal controls. And then the last paragraph states that we perform tests of compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, but we did not provide opinion on compliance with those provisions as that was not an objective of our audit. On the following page are the qualitative aspects of accounting practices. We point out in that first paragraph that during 2024, the Metropolitan Council adopted new accounting guidance by implementing the provisions of Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB Statement 101, which is for compensated absences. This new statement updated the recognition and measurement guidance for compensated absences. There were no other significant accounting policies adopted, and the application of existing policies was not changed during 2024. The next section talks about accounting estimates. They're based on management's knowledge and experience about past and current events and assumptions about future events. These estimates are particularly sensitive because of their significance to the financial statements and because of the possibility that a future event that affects them may differ significantly from those expected. And then in the next section, it talks about the significant estimates that appear on the Metropolitan Council's financial statements, and then below that, their methods of valuation. None of these have changed in recent years, so I won't go through them. About halfway down the next page, we encountered no difficulties in performing our audit, which is great to report. Under corrected and uncorrected misstatements, professional standards require us to accumulate all known and likely misstatements that were identified during the audit, other than those that were trivial, and communicate them to the appropriate level of management. Management has corrected all such misstatements. Also, none of them detected as a result of our audit procedures and corrected by management were material, either individually or in the aggregate. There were no disagreements with management noted during the course of our audit. The management representation letter is going to be sent out once we set an opinion date, so we'll need that signed and sent back to us. And then top of the next page, management consultations with other independent accountants. If you decide to consult with an outside accountant on an accounting topic that is related to your financial statements, we just ask that we are put in contact with them to ensure that they have the same information that we have. But to our knowledge, there were no such consultations with other accountants this year. Under the other matters section, it talks about the sections in the ACFR other than the financial statement section and what level of procedures we perform over them. So the first paragraph talks about the required supplementary information. It's all listed there. And so we've applied limited procedures to this information, which include things like comparing it to the basic financial statements and just other knowledge that we obtained during the course of our audit. We do not audit the RSI and we don't express an opinion on it. The next paragraph talks about the supplementary information, also included in the back of the financial report. And it's all listed there, all the various types of supplementary information. We compare and reconcile this information to underlying accounting records used to prepare the basic financial statements or to the basic financial statements themselves. And then the last paragraph talks about the introductory and the statistical sections, which are also part of the ACFR. We do not audit this information and we provide no assurance on it. We do read through it and we did not identify any material inconsistencies with the financial statements. At the bottom of the page are significant new accounting pronouncements. This information is just for your knowledge, so you know just about accounting pronouncements that are coming out in the next few years, to be aware of them and know that they need to be implemented. All right, the next report is the independent auditor's report, or the opinion. The second paragraph there states, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements referred to above presents fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the Metropolitan Council as of December 31st of 2024. What this all means is that we have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion available. It's a clean opinion. Then farther down on the page, responsibilities of management for the financial statements. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. The auditor's responsibilities at the very bottom of the page. Our objectives are to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and issue an auditor's report that includes our opinions. On the next page, our audit was performed in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America and government auditing standards. We exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism. We identify and assess the risk of material misstatement and perform audit procedures in response to those risks. We obtain an understanding of internal control relevant to the audit and design our audit procedures based on those circumstances. We evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies and the reasonableness of significant accounting estimates. And we concerned whether there is a concern about the going concern for a reasonable period of time or the ability for Met Council to continue functioning. The next couple sections are very similar to the required communications letter and just go through what level of procedures we perform over the various sections. Right, then we will jump to the report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. So this is our report on the financial statement audit that we performed. Under the report on internal control over financial reporting, the second paragraph down, it defines what a deficiency is, which is a deficiency in internal control over financial reporting exists when the design or operation of a control doesn't allow management or employees in the normal course of performing their assigned functions to prevent, detect, and correct misstatements on a timely basis. There's two types of deficiencies that we will report to you. The first one is a material weakness. This is a deficiency or combination of deficiencies in internal control where there's a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. Significant deficiency is less severe than a material weakness, but it's important enough to merit attention by those charged with governance. And we are happy to report that neither material weaknesses nor significant deficiencies were identified during the course of our audit. On the following page, under Minnesota legal compliance, in connection with our audit, nothing came to our attention that caused us to believe the Metropolitan Council failed to provide with the provisions of the contracting bid laws, depositories of public investments and public funds, conflicts of interest, claims and disbursements, and miscellaneous provisions sections of the Minnesota Legal Compliance Audit Guide. This is a requirement of local governments that we audit these specific Minnesota legal compliance requirements, and nothing came to our attention during the course of our audit that caused us to believe that Met Council failed to comply with these provisions. And then the next report is a report on compliance for each major federal program, report on internal control over compliance, and report on the schedule of expenditures of federal rewards as required by uniform guidance. So this report is covering the federal programs we audited along with the schedule of federal expenditures, or the CFA. So under the opinion on the major federal program, in our opinion, the Metropolitan Council complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on the major federal program for the year ended December 31st of 2024. So an unmodified opinion was also issued on the federal awards. So we're happy to report that as well. Under the basis for opinions, our audit was conducted in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, standards applicable to financial audits contained in government auditing standards, and the requirements of uniform administrative requirements or uniform guidance. The rest of this report is very similar to the opinion on the financial statements, so I won't go through it. The definition of a deficiency is consistent with there.
The next schedule or page there is the schedule of findings and questions costs. This is a really good summary of kind of the things that we went over on those last two letters with our opinions, and then any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies we identified. So under section 1, under financial statements, again, we issued an unmodified opinion over the financial statements, and we identified no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Under federal awards, again, we issued an unmodified opinion over Met Council's federal award. We identified no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. The major federal program that we audited in 2024 was the Federal Transit Cluster. Those assistant listing numbers are listed there. Section 2, no matters were reported related to financial statement findings. Section 3, no matters were reported related to federal award findings and question costs. On the following page is the summary schedule of prior audit findings. In 2023, we did have a significant deficiency over the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. We performed follow-up testing in 2024, and we resolved that finding. So at the bottom there under status, it is fully corrected and corrective action was taken. The next few pages are the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. very consistent from last year as far as programs. On the second page, however, I will point out there are 2 new programs, assistant listing number 2534 and 66046. Otherwise, those programs were all listed last year. I will note the total federal awards did decrease, total federal awards expended did decrease from 2023 by about 146 million. And that was mostly related to the decrease in federal transit cluster. They're listed at the bottom of page 3 of the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And then the last page of the packet is just the notes to the SEPA. Yes.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the presenter?
Charlie,
Member Rothman?
I want to thank the State Auditor's Office for this great work and compliments to everyone involved in managing and controlling these internal controls around especially the single audit, the SEPA federal grants that have been identified. So just an excellent result. Good job.
Any others? Just a comment. It was good to hear that you didn't come up against any barriers or roadblocks with cooperation with management, so that's good to see. Transparency is important in our work. Any other final comments or thoughts? All right. We need a motion to approve this. All right, well, thanks Stephanie and Zachary
Thank
for your
you.
presentation. Next up, we have the Audit Plan 2025 Amendment and Updates with Matt Hicks.
I'm gonna have Tim come to the table and guide my slide deck for me. There's so much interesting content still to come.
Wow, so good. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through business item number 3, the audit plan amendment, and then continue on with my CA report. And just setting up a little bit of context for the new members. So typically, we ask the audit committee for approval of the audit plan. Our plan has really become more of a rolling plan than a single year audit plan. So we often have a full debrief of our risk assessment process and a full audit plan for approval in December. And then typically throughout the year, as new items come up and as we complete our work, we'll do at least one amendment to the audit plan, sometimes more. What we're gonna walk through today is our mid-year update. So I'll walk through kind of the items that are falling off, one that we're adding, and then ask for approval of the plan as it is. Flip to the Let's see what development beautiful picture of Minneapolis. As far as completed audits, so from December when we approved the plan till now, we finished 4 projects. The risk management process review was completed earlier this year. IT facility security, for those of you who weren't here, we actually have split our work on IT facility security into a couple different reports because it's a lot of work. And rather than save it all at the end, we've broken it up into pieces. So we presented one piece in the spring, and then we'll have another one yet later this year. So that's the IT facility security. And then today we'll talk about Metro Transit comments and complaints and non-revenue vehicles. So those 4 will come off the plan. Here's a list of our current audits that we're working on. So this will remain, although they'll be shifted just in the plan to be, the section of things we're working on. Obviously, it's kind of a lot, I won't go through this in detail, but a lot of work ongoing, including with our third-party contractor, Calci Solutions. The addition, IT professional services contracts. So we have a project at the council called Business Process System Integration. This has been going on for several years, a multi-million-dollar project. It's essentially an ERP system upgrade. There are 6 main projects within it. And there is in addition a staff augmentation contract these were 31 contracts executed a few years ago. So I think for a couple different reasons, we've decided this is something we should start getting into monitoring. We haven't decided exactly what our engagement will look like in this area. We're still doing some due diligence based on some information we've been provided. IS is actually working with Gartner to do an assessment of this project as well, so we're looking at that. And then we'll determine exactly what this might look like going forward, whether it's an audit, whether it's monitoring, or something else. But I think it's worth, given the scale and size of this and the importance and risk of the organization, worth our time to spend on VPSI. So we're asking for, we're titling it IS, which is Information Services, our internal department, professional services contracts, give us a little bit of an umbrella to look at more than just the single projects. So that'll be the one thing we're adding. And then this is just a list of other projects we're working on to round out the plan. So really just the relatively minor changes this time, but basically sticking to the plan we executed in December. And with that, I can take any questions.
Any questions for Matt? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the reports, and Matt will continue with the chief audit.
I do need to vote on.
Oh, sorry. Can I get a motion for the audit 2025 amendment and update?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you. Next, we'll continue to the reports, and then Matt will continue with the chief audit executive's report.
Okay, so this is now starting into what will normally be a segment of this meeting where I give some updates on our department and some things we're working on aside from the audit plan. So it's a little more granular detail, some of the things we just talked about. But we talked at the outset about the new members we have in the audit committee, so I won't dwell on that, but I did want to just mention here that Chair Lee and Vice Chair Bento and CFO Ned Smith helped with that process to go through and select new membership. And we really are happy with the result and looking forward to the engagement with our new membership. We still have 2 seats that will, one eventually be vacated. We've already given you your prize, so.
And I love it.
Yeah. And then Councilmember Zoltar, who left the council earlier this year. So we'll have 2 new members. We planned a training for all the new members. This will be part of the charter that we're going to approve and part of our old charter to make sure that you have the background you need to serve in your roles. I wanted to wait until after we had the full membership to do that. So look out for a scheduling, just to have a couple hours just to go through, kind of do some background. Probably extend that invitation to all the existing council members as well, just in case it's useful. And I also have delayed a little bit the approval of the audit framework, which is our internal audit policy, the audit committee charter, the audit department charter, just until we have our full membership. So they're drafted, and they're drafted based on feedback we got last year during peer review, and according to the new Internal Institute for Internal Audit standards. So they're all set to go, just waiting for some internal vetting and the new membership, full membership to be present. So look for that probably at our October meeting. Just some internal department staffing, Tim Larson was selected formally as our audit manager. He's been serving in that role since last year, but we got through the recruitment process and he was selected. So now we'll have soon to be an open position to backfill Tim's promotion. Very happy to have Tim on board in that role. Won't go too much in detail on the ongoing audit work. We just kind of showed that slide. I do want to highlight a couple of a little corner of this report that covers our advisory work. So advising is a role that our internal audit function plays. As things come up, it's not as formal as the full audit work. And in some of these cases, there are areas that could end up being full audit work, but just some areas we've been asked to offer advice. One I've mentioned before, we just have to finish it up, is video use and internal controls. So looking at how we use video at the council, the systems, how we share data practices, retention, use for business cases. So we have some recommendations based on some work that we have in that area that I'm working on just vetting. There's been some questions about timekeeping at Metro Transit, so we're looking at just understanding more about how that process works and thinking about whether there's some suggestions we can make there, whether it's worth doing more formal audit work in that space. Relates to how overtime is approved and reviewed in certain areas. And then we've also had some work we've been doing around personally identifiable information in job applications. So in some cases, we've included driver's license information, which is sometimes essential to get for on certain applications, and sometimes this isn't necessary. So we're looking at whether there's ways we can tighten up those controls around data. Other things, significant external audits. I've mentioned this committee before. We have our Federal Transit Administration triennial review. This is our every 3-year compliance review that all transit agencies go through. That's scheduled. We've already submitted paperwork for that. Our onsite is scheduled in September. Internal audit plays a role in terms of helping coordinate that effort. So we'll participate in that. And there is a rumor, I've not gotten a letter on this yet, but that we'll be having an additional procurement system review at around the same time. That's not an uncommon thing for a transit agency our size, and not uncommon with when we have agency has major capital projects. So it sounds like it'll be a separate initiative, but around the same time. So we will anticipate how they have too.
And also by the feds?
Correct. So they'll get and I'm not sure if we have the same contractor that we'll work with, or if we're gonna send them the same Region 5.
Chair Lee, Matt, can you describe your role in those big audits? What does internal audit do? How do you guys help facilitate that process?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, so I act as the point of contact, the primary point of contact with the contractor. We do a lot of just facilitating, so we create SharePoint sites, set up meetings just to go over who's going to do what. With the big agency, we have multiple divisions that participate in responding to the triennial audit. We also, a practice we started a few triennials ago, was to set up the contract. It's an open book test. I mean, there's the contractor publishes their guides, or the FTA publishes the guide their contractors use. So we know all the questions we're going to be asked. So what we'll do is we'll just set up a meeting, and our staff will play the role of the contractor and just say, here's the question you're going to get. Who's going to raise their hand and answer it? How are we going to answer it? So it's a coordination role, not necessarily. We're a little careful not to say we're answering this unless it's very specific on it, which it rarely is. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so other things we're working on, by October, we're gonna have a more formal, I think it'll be a good level setting meeting for this group with new membership of our follow-up work. So just on the screen is paper checks, fair evasion. These are some of the past work that we've done. We're continuing to follow up on vendor file job classification, and thinking about risk acceptance. So understanding how, some of these areas that have been out there for a couple of years now, move into formal risk acceptance if we're not going to close out the recommendations, and kind of develop a process for how that's going to work. And we have a significant number of these open findings in information services that we've had for the past couple of years. So we've talked to them about, starting to think about how they're going to approach and what has been closed out and what could be closed out and what will still be down the road. So we'll talk a little more about that in October. A couple other things. We are very, very close to executing a contract for an audit software solution. This was a recommendation from our peer review and something I think we've been really ready for as we've matured. So we're really looking forward to that, although it's going to be a big commitment of time in the fall to work with the implementing contractor to get our team up to speed and transition from our existing homegrown tool to a piece of software that's from the market. But I think it will really show results in terms of efficiency, and I think we'll have a lot better reporting that we can use in this committee and other places to show the results of our work and follow up. With that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Tim and Brenna, and they're going to walk through our full response to I talked a little bit about some of this, but our EQA from last fall. So they're going to talk through the slides on that.
So again, a little bit of context for the couple of new committee members. So we had an external quality assessment done by members from APTA, kind of with the main points of like how well are we complying with the IIA standards, performing gap analysis with the new standards, and then just general opportunities for improvement. So in Director Latour's response, he bucketed them up into 6 action items, as you see on the screen. And we're going to walk through a few of these. Director Latour's already talked about a handful of these. So with the framework refresh, again, as Director Latour said, those are all drafted. We're just waiting to do a formal approval sometime in hopefully October. The manual refresh, there's quite a bit of work here. This is where Brenna and I have been spearheading this effort. And I can turn it over to you if you want to talk about some of the updates.
Sure. So a couple pieces from this annual refresh. With the new IIA standards, we have new topical requirements, with cybersecurity being the only one that's out so far, but we expect there will be more. We also received some comments during the peer review about wanting to improve ways to look at external risks during the engagement level risk assessment. So for folks who were around probably 4 years ago now at this point, when our original equity tool was developed and discussed at this committee, we're looking at drawing inspiration from that and refreshing it to include topical requirements, external risks, and some of these other areas, just to make sure that we're hitting on those at every audit. Other policies and procedures that are either being drafted or will be being drafted in the near future include follow-up, risk acceptance. Which ones are you working on?
So we've created how we create a procedure how we do our engagement level risk assessment, as well as updating our audit checklist, which kind of guides us through our audit and all the gates that we need to hit. We'll need to develop something for our annual risk assessment, supervisory reviews, and a number of other things as I think about all our different bullet points that we have in the response. So there's no shortage of work here. That's why we kind of started with this area, because there's quite a bit of work. But other than that, again, we talked about the software a little bit, hoping to have that implemented by the end of this year and start using it by 2026. Strategic plan, we're actually a little ahead on this one. That just got assigned out to staff. So we're due to refresh that since it's going due at the end of this year. Again, we'll take a look at what our mission, vision, values are, how we align with other strategic plans, including Imagine 2050, how we use and select third parties, and whether or not we need any additional or to revise KPIs. And the last couple, so performance standards, again, we update performance standards annually, but we'll need to include things such as professional courage, which is part of the new IA standards. We don't have a formal onboarding and training guide or practice right now, so we'll need to put that together. And then it's kind of somewhat similar with the QAIP, the Quality Assurance and Improvement Plan. We have pieces and elements that we do of this, but again, putting it into a more formal document. So that'll begin shortly, and again, hopefully by the end of 2025. So this is, again, the timeline that we shared before. So our goal is by the time we hit October to have most of this audit manual updated with the necessary procedures. So, any questions?
Any questions for the presenters?
Chair Lee, I have just an observation. Congratulations. by the
Thank
way. So your software is gonna drive a lot of this, right? I mean, there's gonna be elements that, are gonna help you create standardization and process, right? But not everything you mentioned, but right.
Chair, just to touch on that, so one of our first objectives was to update the audit checklist, which is going to help inform how we want to set up or configure the software. So, yeah, and we fully understand that after we get through all this and update our audit manual, we'll probably need to do another revision of how we use the tool in 2026.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I want to thank the staff. I mean, they're doing a lot of work, as you've seen on the board, and they're all volunteering to do extra work on some of these areas, which is, kind of our philosophy is to grow staff through getting experience and working on things to push them a little bit. So appreciate all their work and their willingness to do these extra projects that really help us build good process that they're bought into and understand more than just being in. So, thanks to them.
All right, thank you. Next, we have our second report of the Metro Transit comments and complaints process. Gupta and Kapinga, this is Lakshmi in the room.
Good afternoon, Chair Lee and members of the committee. My name is Lakshmi Vamori. I'm here with my colleague Gupta Guppengat, and we're going to be presenting the Metro Transit Comments and Complaints Process Audit. So a little bit of background about the Customer Relations or CR department. It is a part of Metro Transit's Administration and External Affairs Department. And its main purpose is to strengthen customer relationships through direct engagement with transit customers. At the time of this audit that was performed, there were at least 10 staff members working with approximately 350 daily contacts. And the CR application or CR app was used by staff to log and categorize these events in that. So these were some of the ways that customers would report any comments, complaints, any feedback on their transit journeys. The most popular ways were by phone, email, and mail. And the data from the CR application was used to inform different policies, any legislative reporting, any public-facing programs, as well as Metro Transit's quarterly safety and security action plan report. And currently, right now, the CR department is in the pre-procurement phase to attain new technology called the Customer Issue and Tracking and Reporting Solution. And as of right now, they are hoping to implement that by Q4 in 2026. So the scope of this audit was from January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2023. We had 3 main objectives for this audit. The first objective was to evaluate customer relations adherence to internal complaint handling policies. And how we did that was to conduct staff interviews, desk reviews, as well as recording any on-site observations. We also sampled 72 standard events that came from the CR application and also 11 special events that came from an external source. Our second audit objective was to confirm IT general controls that included any access, backups, and retention compliance. And how we did that was to compare user access lists, and we also assessed any backup and data retention practices. Our third audit objective was to verify any existence of documented procedures. And how we did that is that we reviewed the role of the CR department in the reporting phase of the Safety and Security Action Plan. So this first slide is just a non-finding observation that we as a team made, and it is about the informal use of tools in CR operations department. So during an on-site visit, auditors observed that there was an informal use of tools, one of these tools being a cheat sheet. And in addition, the department did not require or standardize the use of these tools, and as well, onboarding relied on informal and peer-based learning. This is inconsistent with GAO-IC standards, which do require that these policies and procedures are documented. And while we don't have an official recommendation for these for this observation, we would like to see in the future some type of formalization or communication of any guidance policies and training for these 4 tools. And with that, I will turn it over to Gupta, who will go over the rest of our findings and our recommendations.
Excellent, thank you, Lakshmi. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. We're going to go through 4 slides. The first 2 are going to focus on the process, and the last 2 are going to be focusing on the IT general controls. So our first finding is related to the CR department's performance on timeliness. In 2019, MT's stated agency response goal was 90% in 3 days, 95% in 5, and 100% in 7 days. So as part of our conversation with the CR staff, we found out that sometime between 2019 and 2023, the time-based metrics was removed as part of a larger shift towards focusing on the customer experience. So the table on the top shows you the results of our findings or our testings, basically. We reviewed 83 events, out of which 72 are part of the CR application, and 11 of them were part of the special events, which was tracked outside the application in an Excel spreadsheet. So as you can see, 36% of the events took up to 3 days to process, 18% took up to 5 days, and then 35% took up to and beyond 7 days to complete. We also found that 11% of the cases were undetermined because it did not have a closing date. So as part of this, we recommend that CR department reinstate timeliness performance to support their department objective and also to improve their timely resolution of comments and complaints. The next finding is related to the special events and how it's being processed outside the system of record, which is the CR application. So CR application is the primary system of record for comments and complaints. They support various business processes and also inform decision-making within the CR department and also Metro Transit at large. As part of our review, we found 117 special events being tracked separately outside the CR app in an Excel spreadsheet. And these special events are usually service requests coming from senior leadership and legislative contacts. So to ensure the data integrity and also to enable faster access to critical data and also to promote operational efficiency, we recommend that CR departments centralize their processing, documentation, and resolution of all comments and complaints, including special events, within the system of record, which is the CR app, at least for now. Moving on to our next finding. This is regarding the access control management and also regarding security gaps. As part of our internal control review, we found out that the CR application does not have a role-based access. Access are revoked and granted manually with an informal process with no documentation. We also found that 5 users had access or who had active access to the CR application do not work for the console anymore. This included a test account that is linked to an external email. We also found that security logs and alerts were also missing in the CR application. So some of the risks associated with having informal access processes and lack of monitoring include both unauthorized access to the CR application and also data compromise. So as part of this, we recommend that CR department establish and document a process for granting and revoking access and also implement and maintain a centralized logging and monitoring system. With that, we move on to our last finding, and this is a lack of formal retention policy within the CR department. As part of our review, we found out there are at least 480,000 events processed since 1998. And none of these events are archived and they are available for CR staff and other people who have access to the CR application to review. So retention policy are usually based on data types, and some of the data types that you can see in the application include customer contacts, responses, disciplinary actions, etc. So the criteria that we used as part of this finding is the state law, which requires complete records inventory and approved retention schedule, and also the council policy, which mandates electronic records as the legal copy unless otherwise specified. So some of the risks associated with not having a tailored schedule include data mismanagement, non-compliance, and excessive storage costs. So some of the recommendation that we have for this is to create and implement a formal standardized retention policy based on or aligned with the organizational and statute requirement. With that, we'll take questions. So just before the question, we have Pam Steffens from the CR department here who will be able to answer any of the questions specifically with the business unit. We also have people from ECM and IS and OEO, maybe. At least I see people from ECM. So with that, we'll take questions. Thanks. I have two questions. My first question is, can you tell us what's the difference between the standard event versus special event?
Yeah, standard events are events that are actually tracked in the CR application, within the CR application. Special events are those specific events that come directly from the senior leadership and legislative contacts. And I think if I can have Pam maybe, if you have anything extra to add between the difference between this, you can come on.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% accurate. So a lot of the feedback that Councilmember Lee, Councilmember Vento, or Barbara, you would send to like our general manager or myself directly. We had a separate process that would track those individually, so we could really see the incoming feedback and how we responded to them. We have since developed a new process where they actually are in the CR app and tracking that way, so that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks. My other question was, you know, we've been around 50 years and I don't know what we were doing before 1998, but why is it taking 30 years for us to get to this point?
Charlie, I would put that question to the business unit.
It is totally remarkable, isn't it? I would say, well, the answer is about, I would say 5 or 6 years ago, granted that's still a long time from 1998, the council went to procure a new CRM. And it was probably a year-long process. And during that time frame, we got in a new, I think it was a CIO, who then decided, hey, we're not gonna procure somebody from the outside, rather we're gonna use Microsoft Dynamics as a new CRM. We started programming something for our new CR app in Microsoft Dynamics, and it really wasn't agile enough to work for us. And so then now, in the last 6 months, we are working on to move towards an external vendor. Why did it take so long? I don't know. We've tried a few things, and it just didn't pan out. So we're pretty confident in the new process that we're down the road in.
Okay, thanks. Well, it's good to know how we got here and that we were going to a better place. Councilmember Barton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Something very significant happened in 2023, which meant Metro Transit had sustainable funding. And so we could also look at how we invest back into the system, which was very significant. We can't underestimate that investment into the transit system, which affects everything that impacts our riders, including customer service responses and things like, we had another thing at Transportation Committee about a week ago where it was aligning all the technology behind our police data capture systems like body cams and dash cams and all that, so they're all on the same system. So we're doing right now a big overhaul in general for a number of things within the transit system, so these things talk to each other better. And even like, you know, my questions are, so we're getting comments in from the transit app, which is new. Like there's new, like we're now connected through an app, you can give real-time feedback. You know, we're putting on a brand new fare system, you know, kind of as we're speaking, that's gonna be able to talk to all the different systems and you know, how is that like tied into this? But when I looked at the dates, when it ends in 2023, none of that is captured. So, you know, like with a combination of a different approach in general to IT and then also the investments that we're putting back into the system, a number of these things I feel will be better. And for the record, Pam is a rock star. So then her department says yeoman's work and it's great.
Thanks, Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I first came on the council 6 years ago, some of the first issues that I happened to be dealing with were transit and in particular Metro Mobility. And I cannot do a loud enough and a long enough shout out to Pam and her team. Just phenomenal. Pam invited me to come over and visit their site, and that was a great experience. So if there's ever an opportunity for folks to actually see these folks in action, I can't recommend it enough. Not only do they provide customer service, they provide a lot of council member service. Because many times folks will call us thinking that we've got magic wands that we can wave. But they're problem solvers, they're good listeners, and they do their best. And I wanna note that a very, very dear friend of mine has been using Metro Mobility now for about 6 or 7 years. I have never heard one complaint from her. And I frequently say to her when she raves about it, please call customer service and let them know they're doing a great job. Because all too often the calls you get are the negative ones, so.
Councilmember Barton.
Just a quick question, and it might be a Pam question, because it's again the 2023 timeline. So we also, out of the legislation, have a new almost kind of real-time reporting for maintenance issues where we have QR codes on a lot of our facilities, bus shelters, different things. You just scan and then but it gets recorded over to our transportation control center. So are those things getting looked into this too?
Yeah, so thank you. That report a problem QR code is near and dear to my heart, along with the code of conduct. When we implemented the QR code, we changed our process within customer relations. So any feedback related to cleanliness and et cetera, we actually create a special situation report, which is something that the control center uses often. And then that report then spins up a report to our facilities folks almost in real time. So we navigated away a little bit from the CRF so that we can make that happen instantaneously. The good news is that there is a broader project called EAMS. Don't know in-depth knowledge about it. But eventually what our hope is that if somebody contacts us, we enter the issue within our new CRM. And then that CRM can ping kind of the EAMS technology and create a ticket. And then every time like a public facility worker cleans up that mess, it then can ping the other system and the customer to say, hey, we took care of this for you, and et cetera. So like many government agencies, there's a ton of systems that we all use that aren't talking to each other. So as part of the requirements in the procurement process, we have kind of different phases where we're going to try our best to connect with other systems that are coming up in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Committee member present.
Just a question. So you said that you were not making recommendations on the cheat sheet and some other informal tools. Is that because they'll be retired with the new system they're procuring, or I didn't catch your?
Yeah, I can answer that question.
Thank
We found a lot of informal processes there, and also our testing did not cross the threshold of 10%. So we didn't find that the testing didn't result the need for actually having a documentation. So there's a lot of informal processes available, like the cheat sheet. So that's one of the reasons why we made sure that that's not like a finding.
And when you say tip, I mean, so I guess the criteria is what I was looking for. Like, what would be the determiner whether you would make that decision? Is it because a lot of informal processes coming from where I am now, sometimes that's what staff relies on heavily, more than it's informal, but it's really sort of their go-to. So I'm wondering if that's.
Having said that, I would like to say that Pam has said that she's already working on making sure that those are documented and formalized, even though that's not an informal. So the CR department is already working on formalizing those various tools that or the aids work aids that they're using. So
Right.
they're already in the process of actually making sure.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then when you talked about the revoking or revoking access, et cetera, and how it was inconsistent, is that due to any sort of identity access management issues generally with employee IDs, et cetera?
Chair Lee, members of the committee, that wasn't part of our scope, so I won't be able to answer specific questions, and we don't have a person from IS here.
Okay.
But I can follow up with you on that after we contact the IS department.
Okay, I mean, I ask because sometimes can be an indicator of issues in other tools as well, or applications as well.
Absolutely.
When you don't have that ready transfer of folks' identity, staff's identity along with their new roles, et cetera, so.
Absolutely, that's a good question. We'll definitely follow up.
Just before Scott jumps in, we've had a series of recommendations on user administration and identity access management. I mean, it's really a big picture, and I think every system we get into, we find the same issue. We have, one of the things we hear about is a tie back to some of those bigger picture recommendations that the council think about implementing a standard around access to these systems, so. And the other piece of it, we always, look at the 4 elements of defining right, condition, criteria, cause, and effect. So like in this case, I don't think we found a lot of big problems with the lack of bad effects in terms of the lack of process written down. It's like they have documentation to help pull from, and those are valuable tools. So that's why you don't see a formal recommendation there, but it's always best practice, right, to like, you know, put more things in writing and more formalized, so.
Yeah,
that's
and I
why we
ask
see it
because,
that
you know, it's like a walking path, right? Sometimes you'll put down a walking path when I was on the planning commission back in my old days, they would lay these paths, but people would just sort of ground down the grass and the dirt somewhere else, and it's like, no, figure out where people are gonna go, and then use that, and then formalize that as opposed to just deciding where you want them to go, and they'll figure out where they wanna be, and sometimes these informal tools are the way that their job actually makes more sense with the way they do it as opposed to,
Absolutely. But, Members of Council?
Thank you, Chair Lee. My question has to do with the, and by the way, great report, nice work on it. My question has to do with the audit follow-up, and maybe this will be a little bit of education for me in terms of how this works here. I noticed for each observation, it states what follow-up action audit will perform. But when I turn to Appendix A, there's 3 different methods for follow-up. I was just wondering if you could explain one of these 3 methods, what are gonna be used for each of these recommendations?
Yep.
Or is it, okay.
Yep, great. Chair Lee and members of the committee, the type of follow-up that we're gonna be doing on this is confirmation. So we will base our follow-up based on the timeline, which is underneath the management responses on there. So when the timeline comes up, we will do a follow-up with the CR department or ECM or IS, whoever is responsible for the actual finding or the corrective action, so to speak. So on this, for example, on the finding, I'm gonna go back here on the finding related to special events. CR department has already made changes. So what we will do in a couple months, we will do another testing and we'll do another follow-up and then report the finding on that as well. So that will be a confirmation. So
Okay.
all of the findings are based on confirmation. We'll do additional testing.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great question. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you for your presentation. And next we'll go to non-revenue vehicles with Tim Wilson and Amy Gillespie.
Chair Lee, members of the committee, my name is Amy Gillespie. I'm here with my colleagues Tim Larson and Ian Klein, and we are here to discuss the non-revenue vehicle audit. So a bit of background on this project. Non-revenue vehicles are used by council employees for council business. This can include transporting employees between wastewater facilities. It can include patrolling bus and light rail stations, as well as transporting supplies between locations as well as other uses. The council purchases, maintains, and disposes of non-revenue vehicles. Non-revenue vehicles are often purchased through state contracts. Routine maintenance is based off of vehicle use and/or vehicle mileage. Finally, when the vehicle has reached the end of its useful life, it is stripped of council decal and equipment and sold on the public auction website. This table represents non-revenue vehicle inventory by division. So you'll see at the time of this audit, Metro Transit owned 440 vehicles and Environmental Services owned 172 non-revenue vehicles. As many of you are aware, the non-revenue vehicle audit is a spin-off project from the fuel management audit that we completed a year ago. So the objectives for this specific project are as follows. First, to ensure that non-revenue vehicles are being maintained, used, tracked, and insured according to council policy, procedure, and control documents. Second is to ensure that non-revenue vehicles are procured and disposed of according to council policy, procedure, control documents, and best practices. And then finally, to verify that employees are eligible to use non-revenue vehicles according to council policy, procedure, federal requirements, and state requirements. The scope of review for this audit, we looked at policies, procedures, data systems, and other documentation. This other documentation included inventory, fuel records, maintenance schedules, vehicle idling and general use records, accident and incident reports, insurance claims, and finally records of vehicle purchase and disposal. The time period we looked at was between June 30th, 2022 and June 30th, 2024. And for the scope of this audit, we decided to exclude utility vehicles such as snow blowers, trailers, boats, lawnmowers, etc. So the first finding from this audit is that no controls exist to ensure timely maintenance or repair of non-revenue vehicles at Metro Transit. So for the 20 vehicles that we reviewed for this testing, we found that 6 vehicles each had 1 work order that had not been closed. Additionally, we found that work orders for standard preventative maintenance took between 1 day and 8 months to complete. During interviews with Metro Transit staff, we learned that there's a few reasons these work orders may not be closed out. One is that the work order was maybe open, it hadn't been completed yet. The work order was maybe on hold, or the work order could have been printed and then lost by a technician. And then finally, and most likely, the work order was done, but just not marked as complete. The reason for this is that there is no control within the TX-based system that sets a time frame for maintenance or repair to be done by. Additionally, the system does not produce an automated reminder. So if a technician goes into the system, they have to manually search for the work order and then close it out. So by and large, these are being completed, but there were a few that slipped through the cracks. As a result, we have 2 recommendations. The first is to define a schedule for responding to work orders. And second is to create an automated system to monitor the status of work orders. I'll hand it to Ian to talk about the next one.
All right, so our second finding is that the processes for tracking Metro Transit non-revenue vehicles can be improved. For our testing, we took a sample of non-revenue vehicles and scheduled on-site meetings to verify if the vehicles were at their reported location. For some vehicles, we needed to contact additional employees or schedule follow-up visits in order to find the vehicles. One example I can give is an on-site meeting where employees called other employees to find where the vehicle was located. So our recommendation is that Metro Transit review the costs and benefits of equipping their vehicles with automatic vehicle location devices. So again, these devices have multiple usages, but one of them is that it can report the exact location of where a vehicle is. Our third finding is that the monitoring of non-revenue vehicles should be expanded. For our testing, we found that Metro Transit does not have a defined threshold for how often non-revenue vehicles need to be used. We also found that there is not a documented or formal method to determine if vehicles are being misused. For instance, if an employee was using a vehicle for personal reasons, there's not a process to monitor if that is happening. So we have 2 recommendations there. One is to create a process for periodically auditing if vehicles are being used for non-work related reasons. Then a second is to define a threshold for how often vehicles need to be used, and then to monitor that threshold. We also want to add that Environmental Services does have a process for monitoring vehicle use. We did recommend that they document the process that they're currently using. I'll pass it off to Tim Larson for our 4th finding.
Yep. So our last area for findings had to do with the driver's license verification process. So the first one is that not all council employees are required to complete the vehicle use agreement form. That vehicle use agreement form is simply stating that the employee is going to adhere to council policy and procedures when it comes to a non-revenue vehicle. That form also has some PII on it in terms of the driver's license number, a partial social security, and if they're a Wisconsin resident, their date of birth. That information was being sent either inter-office mail or to an inbox of an employee to review. Third, we have multiple systems, so when we're doing license checks verification, I set it up so that they're pulling driver's license information from multiple systems. I believe there's 3 or 4, one of them being in an Excel spreadsheet, to ping the DVS website to get the results and to provide that information via dashboard. The fourth is that the driver's license, those that live in Wisconsin, IS has to do this manually, so they have to manually go to the website, enter it in the driver's license number, and then get the results. That information unfortunately is not being provided to the stakeholders on that same dashboard. So our recommendations are, one, to require all council employees to use and agree to the vehicle use agreement form. Two, make that form electronic, and then try to have centralize that driver's license information into one or maybe two systems. And then finally, provide that Wisconsin driver's license information via that dashboard. That was it. Do want to thank ES and Metro Transit employees for their help. This was a lot of information that we requested, a lot of that data that we went through, so it was quite a few meetings, but do want to recognize their help in this. And that will take questions.
My question is, do we have a good way of tracking the chain of custody of vehicles? So like, for example, if I take a fleet car and I do a minor fender hit and run, I don't get caught, nobody catches me and I don't report it, I return the vehicle with Matt check set up next after me, and somebody to blame Matt for the damage?
Chair Lee, are you asking if something happens internally,
Yeah.
is there a process? So all incidents are required to be reported to risk. I imagine if that hasn't been reported by the person who was involved, it would be caught during standard maintenance, but that is a requirement that all internal and external incidents are reported to the risk department.
Any other questions? Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At least for the elements related to maintenance and that side of things, we're bringing on this new enterprise asset management system. And obviously, we've had a transit asset management system, but maybe didn't apply to non-revenue vehicles. My understanding of the enterprise version is it would, and there'll be a lot more things that will be brought into that. Will that mitigate some of that part of it?
Chair, I don't know if we can speak to that
All
right
right.
now. I'm looking back at my Metro Transit experts if they have.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, we've been hindered by TX-based capabilities. We do have GPS units in about a third of our fleet in Metro Transit, and that's just as a result of more oversight from certain departments. But we have identified some potential systems that will directly integrate with the new EAMs. We just are kind of at a holding pattern right now on that.
It's been recently procured, but it's not here yet. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, this is so everyone knows, it's been authorized and all that, it's not implemented yet.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just have one. Can you tell me, is there any sort of process to check for, driving records? Like if someone has, because you said you do the license check, is that sort of a real time or is it a one-time kind of event? If someone gets, for instance, a DUI on their record after they've already sort of, input all their information and stored it, is there some way to update that every?
Chairly, a committee member. So that is a license check. So I believe the police department does this, I think they request it daily. I think everybody else is weekly that we're pulling the driver's license and providing that information out. So yes, it's pretty frequent. And it would catch things such as driving violations, infractions, DUIs and stuff like that.
And you found that that's done regularly?
Yes.
Okay.
Chair, do you have a question? Is training required for our employees who are eligible to take these non-revenue vehicles?
Chairly, committee member, I don't know if there's any specific training. As far as we're aware, there's just a vehicle use agreement form that is being used.
Yeah, just to know on the last question of Committee Member Pesek, when I used to work for the mayor's office in St. Paul, the policy for all employees in the city were if any part of your job entailed driving for the city and you received a moving violation ticket, it was your job to report that to your supervisor. So just an example of some of the policy that other governments have. Any other questions?
Chair, I have one more question. So obviously knowing where your vehicles are inherently just makes sense. I'm just wondering if there are, does that cause, are there operational implications to where somebody might need a car and then they can't get one because they don't know, they don't know where one would be available, does that occur? As far as you know?
Yeah, Chair Lee and members of the committee. So I can kind of describe the current process, and in doing so that might answer your question. So for environmental services, they have those automatic vehicle location devices on all their vehicles, so they're able to find in real time where a vehicle is. When it comes to Metro Transit, they have non-revenue vehicles assigned to specific employees. At least that's the case for most of the vehicles, they're assigned to specific employees. And so that is sort of like the method in place now to ensure that, if someone were to need a specific vehicle, they would have that assigned to them. Hopefully that answers your question, is what's happening now.
So they're not really like a fleet, a pool of fleet cars that are just available for anyone at any time.
Right.
Any other questions? All right, thanks Ian, Amy, and Tim, thank you. Our last information item is that our next audit committee meeting is scheduled for October 28th. Lastly, before we adjourn, I just want to say once again, thank you to Councilmember Sue Bento for her public service, her lifelong public service. She retired as a school teacher and for some reason gave 7 years of her life to the Met Council.
Well, I may be back in October, so who knows?
So thank you, Sue, for your service.
I can just, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, just preview for the October meeting. I'm trying to do this at this business item, this information item. So the plan, at least as of right now, we'll have the charters and the policy for approval. I'll do my report. We'll have some discussion follow-up, which I talked about. Also some of our updates on our complaints and investigative work, which has been heavy workload this year. We'll talk about external audit updates, triennial. We'll go with the Hatter on site and we'll have preliminary observations from that process. We've got our recruitment selection, small purchases, our transit management organization, Move Minneapolis audit, IT facility part 3, and benefits that are slated. We'll see if we get all those to the committee. And then probably a IS security update if there's time. So an action-packed agenda in October. So look forward to seeing maybe all of you there.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yep.
The information security presentations, at least from my vantage point, are always the most intriguing. It's almost like a Netflix presentation, so it's great. Can't recommend them enough.
Thank you, Sue, thank you, Matt. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.